My name's Caitlin No. I'm here at Jerry's Music Shop in South Hadley, Massachusetts to talk to you about bassoon care and maintenance. The first thing that we're going to talk about is how to properly carry your bassoon when you're not sitting down. First thing you should always remember is you should always grab your instrument and hold it by the boot. You should never hold your instrument by the seat strap like this. The reason why is that your seat strap may come off of your instrument, and if that happens, you may drop it and damage it. So you should always hold the instrument from the boot, because this is the lowest part on the instrument. None of this is going to fall out. If you hold it up here, it's possible for these two joints to come loose, which would make your boot drop on the floor. It's possible if you hold it up here for this to come off and for the rest of your instrument to fall. So always carry it from the bottom. You can hold the seat strap, and it's probably a good idea to always keep it in your hand, because if you let it drag on the floor like this, you may step on it and trip. So always hold your seat strap up, or you can take it off and put it over your shoulder. Always a safe bet. Next thing we're going to talk about is your bocal. Now your bocal is very, very delicate. You don't want to walk around with it sticking off of your instrument like this, because you may hit something with it and bend it, and they're really not fixable once they bend. So when you're carrying your instrument from place to place, set it on the floor, take your bocal out. Now ideally, you should hold your bassoon with one hand and your bocal in the other. This really is the safest way. In a pinch, you can place your bocal inside your bell and walk around with it this way. I don't recommend this because, again, it can move around a lot. It may hit something inside, like the lip of your bell, and dent that way. Also, you may accidentally lean forward too far. It may fall out. It may dent. Really, the safest thing is to hold it in your other hand at all times. This will prevent your instrument from coming apart. It will prevent any of the parts of your instrument from being damaged. The next thing that we're going to talk about is how to properly clean your instrument after it's been played. Whether you have a wood bassoon or a rubber composite bassoon, which would appear black, it needs to be swabbed every time that you play. The two pieces of your instrument that you need to swab are your wing joint, also known as your tenor joint, and your boot. All right? So the reason why you don't need to swab the other two joints is because by the time that the air goes through the tubing around to the other side, there's not enough moisture in it anymore for it to condense in these other two joints. So you do not have to swab them. So it doesn't matter what order you do it in. Just make sure, take your two pieces apart and put the other one down. I usually do my boot first, but again, that's a personal preference. Now, this is a little gross. You will have to tip water out of your instrument sometimes. Right now, I don't have any water in. Always tilt it just to make sure that there's no excess water sitting in the bottom. Next, you're going to take your swab. Now, there are two different kinds of swabs that you will generally find. There are cotton swabs, which look like this, and there are silk swabs. I use cotton swabs. Cotton swabs, you're going to have a set of two. One is for the boot, one is for the wing joint. So the boot swab usually has this little set of like a ball chain on the end of it. Usually the other looks different. That may be different with your set of swabs. It should be clear from the packaging. So take your boot swab, and you're going to place the ball chain in the large hole. Give yourself some slack. Let the weight carry it to the bottom. Turn it onto its side, and you'll hear it slide through the tubing. Tilt it upside down. It'll come out the other side, and then just pull it through, and you're done. I'm going to put this down, and we're going to pick up our wing joint. You should always swab your instrument from bottom to top. So we're going to place our weight. You can see this weight looks different than your other swab does. Place it in the bottom. Let the weight pull the string through and out the other side. Now, if you do have a silk swab, you can use the same swab for both pieces. Again, this is a personal preference. Now we're going to talk about how to properly care for the tenons on your instrument. Now, a tenon is the part of your instrument that attaches it to its adjoining piece. So it's this section here. You're going to see two different kinds of wrapping on most tenons. You're going to see cork. This is a cork wrapping. You're also going to occasionally see a threaded wrapping, as you can notice on my long joint, also called a base joint. So you can see it's usually red, although the color doesn't matter. It's up here and down here. This is entirely the personal preference of usually your repair person. Either kind of tenon is fine, and you can care for them the same way. Now, occasionally you may find, especially as seasons change, that it's harder to put your instrument together because the joints don't seem to fit together as well. This is a time to grease the tenons on your instrument. So just regular cork grease, any brand is fine. What you're going to do is you're going to take your joint and your tenon and put a very light coating of cork grease on. What I usually do is I place it on one spot, then I take my fingers and spread it around. Don't wipe your hand on your pants after you do this because it will stain. You can keep a cloth in your case for that purpose if you like. Next, you're going to place it in its home, and you should feel once you have put the cork grease on, it will slide much more comfortably into place. Now again, as I said before, you can care for threaded tenons exactly the same way. You may find that with thread you need to use a little bit more or less cork grease. It'll be different with every instrument, so just feel it out for what works for your instrument. Again, you want to feel a thin layer of lubrication. You don't want it to move around too much because your instrument can wiggle around when you're trying to play, which makes playing very difficult. Okay, let's check and see how we're doing here. This feels good to me. Perfect. And that wiggling back and forth motion will get our tenons into place. And that is how you care for your tenons on your instrument. So just a few more notes on properly maintaining your bassoon. Your vocal over time can collect small particles, and that can affect your tone quality in a very measurable way. So about once every 6 months, you should be cleaning your vocal out with a brush and warm soapy water with your private teacher's supervision. Next thing we should talk about is caring for a wooden bassoon. Now, we should really be applying these rules to all bassoons. However, wooden bassoons are much more susceptible to things like humidity and temperature changes. Wood is very delicate, and it can crack if not properly cared for, which can be very expensive to fix, and in some cases can actually be impossible to fix. So in order to avoid that, a couple of things you should remember. Never leave your bassoon in a car unattended for any length of time. Hot weather, cold weather, don't do it. If you bring your instrument in the car with you, take it in with you wherever you're going. Don't leave it unattended. One thing that can help, especially in dry or cold months with problems with improperly humidified wood, is a case humidifier. One good brand that you can consider is Dampit. These are string humidifiers technically, but they also work for bassoons. You just follow the instructions on the package, place it inside your case, maintain it as directed by the company. You can also use cigar humidifiers. They work very well for this type of work. Just make sure that the part of the humidifier that is wet is not directly touching any wood in your instrument. As long as it's inside the case, it will humidify your bassoon. The other thing you should be careful when storing are your reeds. You should be storing your reeds in a designated reed case. Any brand is fine. They should have some ventilation holes, which you'll be able to see. If you don't have a reed case purchased from a music vendor, You can also use an Altoids tin filled with cotton batting, as long as you poke some holes in the side with your parents' supervision with a hammer and nail. But your reeds generally should not be stored in the container that they come in at the store. That's a good way just to make sure that your reeds don't grow any mold and they maintain their longevity longer that way, and you won't need to buy new